Okay, hi. I apologize that I'm late this week in getting this video up for you. It is Wednesday, 3 p.m. Um, so let's see here. Last week, yes, we had the case assignment on the University of Trent, and I hope to get to those papers tomorrow, certainly Friday at the latest. Sorry about the delay there. Um, I guess in general, though, right, the University of Trent case study is sort of a precursor to this week's Aspire case study. Clearly, we're getting a lot more complicated quickly as we move through some of the weeks here. So, I wanted to talk just a little bit about this week's readings in the Coe book, right? And then just make you all aware of a message that I've sent you all to help you get started a little bit on the discussion forum questions. But first things first. Okay, the Coe book. We have 4 chapters this week. Right, chapter 9 is about managing physical assets like inventory and stuff. It's pretty mechanical there. I don't think there's anything startling to speak about. In number 10, it talks about investing funds. If you're in that great position of having excess funds to really invest, how do you do it? That chapter actually kind of gets into some detail and talks about, very cryptically, talks about different investment vehicles or instruments. I've been told once, kind of tongue in cheek, but as a rule of thumb, if you don't understand it, don't invest in it. That actually came out of the Bernie Madoff scandals in New York City, the pyramid scandals, where a lot of nonprofits got really burned because they didn't get in early enough and didn't get out early enough, and they got left holding the bag. But they got in it because they knew someone who knew someone who knew someone and said, "Oh yeah, I know that guy. He's great." If you don't understand it, maybe you shouldn't be investing in it. I guess the one caveat to that is simply if you are Harvard and you're paying long-time reputable people big bucks to invest your money, then maybe you can feel a little bit more confident. Okay. Let's see. In chapter 11, it talks about managing bank relations, and I guess the one thing I thought about it when I was reading that chapter was simply that you really want to make sure that your banker is your friend. What do I mean by friend? Someone who understands your business and also has an affinity for it. The Coe here sort of talks about a competitive process for finding a bank, who's got the best deal for you, who doesn't, and that is important. But I'll just share a little story here, if I can, to illustrate what I'm trying to get across here in terms of having the banker be your friend. At a nonprofit that I worked at here in Springfield, a $50 million organization, I was the chief operating officer, over the CFO, and basically over everything. I reported to the president, who reported to the chairman of the board. We had a long-time relationship with a local bank that got bought up by a regional bank that got bought up by a national bank that ultimately got bought up by an international bank. And frankly, over time, we were such small fish to such a big international organization that the personal relationships that were originally created and on which the banking relationship with our local bank was built sort of got diluted as the bank got bought up, became this Goliath. And so actually, over time, that bank sort of gave us the brush off, and they were charging us rates that were not competitive any longer. So we ultimately got rid of that, or went to a different bank, another local bank that hadn't been bought up yet. Maybe that same progression will happen again, but you really want a bank that really wants you and isn't going to stick it to you. I will say that the other reason why you really want a bank that is a friend of yours is that there'll be times when there's sort of an emergency and you'll need to go to that bank on short notice to say, listen, we've got this cash flow problem, or we have this issue. We are solvent, we're okay, but we need to increase our credit line because our major funder is having political issues, and they haven't done the state budget yet. And because they haven't done the state budget yet, we can't do any of our contracts yet. And because we can't do any of the contracts yet, we're not getting any payment. And yet, in a good faith effort, we're continuing to operate the programs. This actually happened to us. It happened both in Massachusetts and Connecticut at the same time. Both state legislatures in the late 90s were at political stalemates, and the state budgets were delayed in being passed. Right there, both of them were supposed to start July 1. Well, both of them didn't get done until early in the fall, and then there were contracting issues, et cetera, and then reimbursement issues. So we were basically floating $3 and $4 million worth of contracts for a couple of months, maybe basically a third of the year. Hence our need for our line of credit to go above its original figure of about $1.25 million and a quarter, up to $1.75 million in over time, as we weren't getting paid. It was really important that the bank stood by us and was able to give us that money that we needed in order to stay solvent, or stay liquid. Actually, we were solvent, we just weren't liquid. And so actually the bank ultimately sent in their workout guy, the guy who works out bankruptcies, because they didn't believe that we were actually solvent and only had a cash flow problem. And it was after that that this bank then jacked up our rates and basically told us without telling us that they didn't want to work with us anymore. Hence we went to the other bank. Okay, a digression there, but just to get a sense that Code talks about picking a bank fairly mechanically and coldly based on dollars and cents. I think there's a little more to it there because of the realities that you may face as a nonprofit. You definitely want a banker who understands your problems and is willing to grow with you. That's kind of like a commercial, I think. But at any rate, okay. And then lastly, number 12, chapter 12, has to do with borrowing funds. Did I do this right? Here are my notes. I just want to make sure I did this right. Oh no, it's chapter 13. Okay, borrow funds. The point there is that he talks about pick an instrument and then purchase it. Pick an instrument of debt and then purchase it. And this is sort of what the CFO in the Aspire case study does this week, right? The whole case study focuses on what debt instrument the CFO should choose in order to borrow the money to buy the building that Aspire wants, right? They're $495,000 short, and they need that money in order to buy the building. So most of the case study talks about what sort of instrument Aspire should choose in order to buy the building, finance the purchase of the building. Okay? Actually, in one of the notes in the financial statement, you will find the answer to that question, because it says what they did, what instrument they used to finance the purchase of the new building. But in our discussion forum, this particularly number 1, we're supposed to figure out, what is the real financial position of this organization. And it's there that I think some of you have gotten stuck since it's Wednesday, and I've only seen one post from one student. So look in your email or your message system, and you'll see that I've posted a one-pager, I guess, of notes, and on the second page, some charts. Well, it's an attachment. Charts of ratios that you can use to figure out figure out the financial position of Aspire. And because there's 3 years of data there from the 2 financial statements that we have, you can see some trend lines. And so I did that one to help you out in case you're getting stuck on this very complicated, involved 36-page case study. Right? Anyway, it's all that stuff there. And to also help you a little bit in terms of chunking out how you actually can break down a case study and financial statements, particularly when they look pretty complicated and involved. Because if you go back to some of the basic ratios that we've learned about, we've learned about 15 or so, a long list of them. But if you just look at some of the basics as they relate to profitability, right, the operating margin, looking at solvency, both short-term and long-term, by looking at the current ratio and the debt ratio, and then looking at liquidity a little bit by looking at days in working cash, you can get a sense: is it profitable? Is it solvent? Is it liquid? And you can, by just doing a couple of simple ratios like that, you can get a pretty clear picture of some of the issues that are facing Aspire. There's clearly a liquidity issue. There's a short-term solvency issue, big time. And there's a question actually long-term, whether they're solvent, right? Because they owe a lot more than they actually own, right? Assets are what you own, but liabilities are what you owe. So when your liabilities, what you owe, are greater than what you own, you're in trouble. And you can see that through some of the, you can see that Aspire has some of those issues by just doing some very simple ratio calculations. Okay, so enough. I'm at 14 minutes. I'll stop there. Look forward to seeing your post. Just post so that we can start the discussion. If your post is a question, that's great. If it's a reaction to the memo I put out, that's great. And if you're just a little slow this week because of Halloween, that's okay too. But let's get the discussion going so that we can collectively try to understand what's going on in the case study. All right? Okay, thanks.